If you fill a raised bed all the way to the top with bagged soil, you're basically paying $200 to bury lifeless dust, much of it in a place your plant roots will never even reach. The garden industry would love for you to believe there's no other way. But what if the real secret to rich, living soil isn't in plastic bags at the store, but in the waste slowly breaking down in your own backyard? Before you spend another $200 on bagged soil, make sure you're growing smarter, not just spending more. Subscribe for practical, budget-friendly gardening tips that actually work.
Let's look at the numbers.
A standard raised bed, 4 feet by 8 feet and 1 foot deep, needs 32 cubic feet of soil. At the garden center, that usually means hauling home 16 large bags of potting mix. At around $12 per bag, often more, you're already close to $200 before you've planted a single seed. That's for just one bed. Want two? Now you're looking at $400.
Suddenly, growing a few tomatoes doesn't feel so simple.
The math is straightforward, but the sticker shock is real. $200 for a wooden box full of dirt. And here's the kicker. Much of that soil ends up sitting far below the root zone during the first growing season. It's money buried where your plants won't even use it. Garden centers don't talk about that part. They show you a wall of neatly stacked bags and tell you to fill it all with premium mix. More soil, they say, is better soil. But when you really break it down, the only thing growing fast in that scenario is their profit margin. Here's what they don't emphasize. Most vegetables don't send roots all the way to the bottom of a 12-inch bed. Lettuce, spinach, and radishes often stay within the top 6 inches. Even crops known for deeper roots, tomatoes, carrots, peppers, typically stay within the top 12 inches under normal conditions. The real action happens near the surface, where warmth, water, and nutrients are easiest to access. If you dig up a mature bed at the end of the season, you'll usually find a dense network of roots in the top layer, and surprisingly little happening at the bottom. The lower half often sits largely untouched. So why are we paying premium prices to fill space plants rarely use? In reality, most crops only need a rich, fertile top layer about 6 to 10 inches deep. That's where you want your best compost and soil. The rest of the bed? It doesn't need to come from a plastic bag. And here's where things get interesting. Every backyard has a hidden resource that most people treat as trash. Fallen branches, old logs, autumn leaf piles, hedge trimmings, even leftover firewood. Instead of dragging it to the curb, that material can become the foundation of your raised bed. The bottom 40 to 50% of the bed doesn't need expensive potting mix. It just needs bulk. Wood, sticks, and leaves provide volume while slowly breaking down over time, feeding the soil from below. A single 4 by 8 bed can absorb more natural material than you might expect. A few storm-fallen limbs, a wheelbarrow of sticks, a thick layer of raked leaves, even those half-rotted logs you weren't sure what to do with. It doesn't have to look pretty. It just needs to be untreated and free from paint or chemicals. What most people call waste is actually the beginning of living soil. And once you see that, it's hard to go back to paying hundreds of dollars to bury bags of dead dirt. As you stack in branches, logs, and leaves, that empty wooden box fills up fast, and suddenly you don't need nearly as many pricey bags of soil. This isn't about cutting corners, it's about using what you already have. The wood will settle over time, but that's part of the design. By building the bottom layer with what nature provides for free, you create a bed that holds moisture, supports healthy roots, and builds rich soil from the ground up. And here's the bonus. You don't have to buy what's already scattered around your yard.
Every stick, every leaf, every chunk of old wood you reuse is one less thing headed to the landfill and one more step toward a living, breathing garden.
But the magic doesn't stop at saving money. When you place rotting wood at the bottom of a raised bed, you're not just filling space, you're completely changing how water behaves in your garden. Each log or half-decayed branch acts like a natural sponge. The fibers and pores soak up rain and irrigation water, holding on to moisture that would otherwise drain away. In fact, decomposing wood can store up to 5 times its own weight in water. A 10-pound log can lock in around 50 pounds of moisture, slowly releasing it back into the soil above as plant roots need it.
During dry stretches, that buried wood becomes a hidden reservoir. While the surface soil dries and cracks in the summer sun, moisture lingers below. Gardeners who build beds this way often notice they're watering far less frequently. Even after weeks without rain, deeper soil levels remain consistently damp. This isn't just convenient, it protects your plants. The steady moisture reduces drought stress, smooths out extreme wet-to-dry swings, and gives seedlings a much better chance during those fragile first weeks. The wood layer even helps pull water upward through capillary action, guiding moisture back toward thirsty roots instead of letting it pool at the bottom or run off.
In short, the wood quietly does the heavy lifting. Day after day, it recharges the soil from below.
And then there's another surprising benefit: heat. As wood slowly decomposes beneath the surface, microbes get to work breaking down carbon-rich material. That biological activity releases energy, and that energy warms the soil above. It's the same process that heats up a compost pile, just slower and steadier.
In early spring, beds built with a thick wood core can measure 5 to 15 degrees warmer than the surrounding ground. That difference may not sound dramatic, but in a garden, it changes everything.
While other beds are still cold and sluggish after winter, a wood layer bed warms up sooner. Seeds germinate faster. Transplants settle in more quickly. For many gardeners, this means planting 2 to 4 weeks earlier than their neighbors. In areas with short growing seasons, those extra weeks can make the difference between a full harvest and falling short.
The warmth is gentle and insulated by the soil above. On chilly nights, it rises slowly, helping protect tender roots from frost. Soil thermometers often show the warmest zone sitting just above the wood layer, gradually cooling toward the surface. That subtle temperature gradient encourages roots to grow deeper and stronger.
What looks like backyard debris is actually a slow-burning engine, storing water, generating warmth, and building fertile soil over time.
Not bad for something most people call waste. The warming effect is strongest in the first few years when the wood is actively breaking down and microbial activity is at its peak. But even after that initial surge, the bed continues to act like a buffer against sudden cold snaps. If you've ever waited impatiently for frozen ground to thaw or watched tender seedlings get zapped by a late frost, this hidden layer offers a real measurable edge. Your season starts earlier and stretches longer, not because you installed heating cables or built a greenhouse, but because of the steady, invisible work happening beneath your plants every single day.
Now compare that to a typical bag of potting mix.
It may look rich and dark, but most commercial blends are surprisingly lifeless. They're usually made from peat moss and perlite, materials that arrive almost completely sterile. There's no living network in that bag, no active biology, just inert particles waiting for you to add fertilizer. A bed built on wood and leaves is different. It becomes alive. As the buried wood begins to decay, fungi move in. Fine white threads of mycelium spread through the crevices, forming vast underground networks. These fungal threads act like nutrient highways, linking the decomposing wood below with the plant roots above. Instead of depending solely on bottled fertilizers, your plants tap into a living delivery system. The fungi break down tough plant fibers and unlock minerals, releasing nutrients gradually and naturally. Scientists often describe the difference this way. Sterile potting mix is a dead end. Living soil is a superhighway.
In a lifeless bag mix, roots are on their own. In a wood-based bed, they're connected to a thriving underground grid. Research has shown that mycelium can shuttle phosphorus, nitrogen, and even water from deep within a decaying log straight to a plant's roots, sometimes more efficiently than those nutrients could move through plain soil alone.
And as the wood continues to decompose, it turns into humus, dark, crumbly, sponge-like material that stays light and airy. Unlike peat-based mixes that often compact into a dense block after a season, humus keeps soil loose and breathable. Oxygen flows freely, microbes thrive, roots expand easily. You're not just filling empty space, you're building something closer to a microbial reef. With each passing year, the bed grows richer instead of poorer. It doesn't harden or collapse, it opens up. When you dig into it, the soil feels springy and alive. You'll see fungal threads, smell that earthy scent, and notice how it holds together without clumping into a brick. While many bagged mixes fade after one growing season, living soil improves with age. It feeds plants, cycles nutrients, and renews itself. For gardeners, that means stronger crops, fewer inputs, and less effort over time, all powered by the quiet collaboration of fungi and microbes below the surface. Meanwhile, the retail system keeps humming along. Each spring, gardeners load carts with bag after bag, repeating the cycle. And the numbers behind those bags tell a revealing story. Retail profit margins on bagged mixes often hover around 50%. For every dollar spent, roughly half goes straight to the store's bottom line. The rest covers inexpensive ingredients, mostly peat moss and perlite, packaged in plastic that will eventually end up in a landfill. So when you buy bagged soil, you're not just purchasing dirt. You're buying into a system designed for repeat sales. But when you build soil from wood, leaves, and natural debris, you step out of that cycle and into one that grows stronger, richer, and more self-sustaining every year.